do something, you take ozone shots?
Some of this, Nick, sounds a little...
It is. It's that's one of the underground therapies.
What do you do when you've got nowhere else to go?
Saved my life, you could say.
Ozone is the most important drug in the world.
Ozone is well known as the protective layer surrounding the Earth, which absorbs the harmful ultraviolet rays of the sun. It is formed when electric or ultraviolet energy reacts with oxygen molecules typically made of two atoms, causing them to temporarily recombine into groups of three. The new molecule is called ozone. Unstable and quick to react with other substances, oxygen's traditional properties are suddenly more powerful.
Ozone acts as a sort of super oxygen in a way. It's sort of electrified oxygen.
By the early 1900s, a handful of European cities had beaten epidemics like typhoid fever by ozonating their drinking water. Today, more than 3,000 cities and towns around the world, including Moscow, Montreal, and Los Angeles, bubble ozone through their water supplies, oxidizing particulates, killing all bacteria and viruses, and leaving the water disinfected and safe to drink.
I was shocked to discover that people travel to various clinics in Germany from South America, from various parts of the United States, Canada, I mean virtually all over the world, and paying between $2,000 and $3,000 cash on the table American for 6 treatments. Included almost everything. They have liver disease, peripheral vascular disease, various types of cancer, pain management, migraine, allergies, hepatitis, what else? Eczema, osteomyelitis, all sort of diseases of various types, diabetes. So here I'm faced with a range of potential clinical applications. A huge number of people are using it. A patient base that's worldwide paying big money for something. There's got to be something in this.
I paid my own way just to go to Germany because I couldn't believe that these things could really be true, you know. Even though I'd been reading all this literature and stuff, I couldn't believe it. But once you go there and you see in his clinic and you see all these patients who've been coming for 5 years or 10 years or 20 years and told that they were going to have their leg amputated, you know, 10 years ago, and here they are perfectly hale and hearty, or people who've had herpes zoster or hepatitis or something and been treated and said that, you know, they'd had this disease for years and now that they're so much better.
Whenever you have a disease, ischemic areas, for instance, in your brain, there's a lack of oxygen. And oxygen is very vital. And you can bring in some metabolism into the brain again, and you can heal, for instance, a brain stroke if you get the patient in the first 48 hours. In this patient here, that was one stroke, a second stroke, and that patient had a third stroke. That small spot here is a third stroke. The first and the second one was treated in the hospital without ozone, and that one was treated at home with ozone. And you can see that the scar is a small one. And since the scars are that small, after brain stroke, the patients are not paralyzed. I can give you the table of brain strokes in the United States from 71 and from 90. There were in 90, 750,000 brain strokes. 250,000 persons died, and 16% are so disabled that they need total care around the clock.
And ozone will help them?
I can count it up from 40 patients, but in 40 patients, nobody was dying, nobody is disabled, and only 2 are so disabled that they have basic movement only.
This 1997 study shows that the effects of some drugs are made more effective when combined with ozone.
We can take 50% of the amount of drugs we normally use, plus ozone, and then it works in the same way, but we don't have the side effects of drugs. For instance, loss of hair, vomiting, dizziness, and so on.
German doctors were the first to use ozone medically during World War I to sterilize battle wounds. But it wasn't until 1959 that Dr. Joachim Hansler developed the first popular ozone machine for medicine. Today, his daughter, Renata Viban, a PhD biochemist, carries on his legacy.
We are the first company in the medical ozone field. We have about 10,000 medical doctors around Germany, and about 70% are working with our equipment. It's not a treatment for patients at their home. The therapy, to give the right concentration, to administer it in the correct form is not so easy.
Dr. Viban has also written the definitive clinical reference book on the subject, addressing the science behind the treatment and listing specific dosages for more than 22 areas of medicine. Ozone is applied in various ways. The main method is known as autohemotherapy, where small amounts of blood are exposed to ozone oxygen and then re-injected into the body. Other methods include rectal and vaginal insufflation, external bagging for burns, wounds, and ulcers, and more recently, the use of an ozone sauna. A growing number of dentists now use ozone to treat cavities and to flush the mouth with ozonated water during surgery. The cutting edge is found in only a handful of clinics. This one is in southern India. A dialysis-type method allows continuous treatment of the blood through a canister of hollow fibers, which allows maximum surface contact with the ozone oxygen. This method, more than any other, shows the dramatic change in blood color from dark to bright red.
I think I was in the world the first physician who treated AIDS patients with ozone. You cannot kill the virus, but you can help the patients. No? And my first patient, they are living in a good situation. They are doing very, very well. They are working. The best success we have on eczema patients, then asthma, polyarthritis, and on special cases of cancer, lymph cancer, non-Hodgkin, we are successful too.
The relationship between oxygen and cancer cells was defined by two-time Nobel Prize winner Dr. Otto Warburg, who confirmed that the key precondition for the development of cancer cells is a lack of oxygen at the cellular level. In 1980, the peer-reviewed journal Science reported that ozone inhibits the growth of human cancer cells without damage to healthy cells.
Another thing are burns. It's a very important treatment because in case of a burn, you know it's very painful. After 10 minutes, no pains. You don't get any infection. And after 3 weeks of treatment for that terrible burn, you have an effect in this way. And after half a year, you can't even see that there is a scar or that there are any alteration of tissue. And the healing time, 1/3 of the normal time without ozone therapy. And that's the reason why I'm using it in burns.
In Germany, we have treated, I think, no less in the last 40 years, no less than 10 million people, I think more.
Started to study the effect of ozone on white cells, and we found that ozone can stimulate cytokine production, that is production of, for instance, interferon, tumor necrosis factor alpha.
These agents directly attack the causes of disease, such as bacteria, viruses, and carcinogens.
The fact that ozone therapy could be useful in different diseases has a rational basis, because you see, you treat blood. Blood is made of several entities, of several cells with different functions, and therefore by activating different cells you can treat different pathologies. That's quite reasonable.
Ozone use has spread from Germany throughout Europe and beyond. But in Russia, a state-run healthcare system has propelled ozone to the front ranks. Major animal and human studies conducted at government hospitals led to approval by the Ministry of Health many years ago.
Ozone has been practiced in Russia for more than 40 years already. The most important event nowadays is the establishment of All Russia Association of ozone therapy. In very many parts of Russia and what we now call the Commonwealth of Independent States, or the form of the Soviet Union, who bring medical ozone into their clinical practice.
Озонотерапией мы начали заниматься более 20 лет назад, и в настоящее время нами организована система обучения, подготовки врачей-специалистов, озонотерапевтов. После дипломного образования в России включает в себя преподавание озонотерапии.
I'm using ozone therapy from 1992. My special interest is pelvic inflammatory diseases. As for results of our work, the most important result is the high percent of pregnancy in group with pelvic inflammatory diseases, because infertility is the most important complication of such kind of disease. The percent of pregnancy in group after ozone therapy is 2.5 times higher than the control group. The main result is well-being of our patients, and in my patients I have no recurrences of diseases.
Other research shows benefits with ear infections, shown here, better results with breast cancer compared to chemotherapy, and reduced nerve damage in burn victims. In this major study of 500 patients with a variety of internal disorders, ozone resulted in improvements for 90% of them. It is now even used experimentally during open-heart surgery to reduce the risks of transfusion.
Nowadays, when all the drugs we buy have become so expensive, ozone is a very good remedy, and it's less time-consuming for the doctors, for the nurses to use it, and it is cheap for the patients.
Russian doctors are also members of the International Ozone Association, which holds world congresses every 2 years, where the cutting edge of ozone research is presented. Hundreds of medical papers have now been published by the IOA, including this study of 300 herpes patients in Brazil, which found ozone reduced pain for almost 90% of them, and for 30%, an elimination of outbreaks for more than a year. And in April 2004, scientists from the University of Marburg announced a potentially major breakthrough. Rabbits with solid deadly tumors were then treated with ozone injected into the peritoneal cavity. The tumors were completely eliminated in 50% of the animals, but important human studies still need to be done. In Cuba, Fidel Castro personally mandated the National Ozone Research Center, which then conducted studies that led to approval by the Ministry of Health. Today, more than 100,000 Cubans have been treated for free. The government even runs an ozone clinic for foreigners.
It's not a paradox that many people want to go to Cuba to be treated. In every main hospital, in every place in Cuba, there is an ozone therapy service. The quality, the attention, the medical knowledge is very high in Cuba.
Well, we have introduced ozone therapy in 1986. We have begun using ozone in animals. We have performed a lot of preclinical tests in order to be sure that this therapy doesn't cause any side effects. After that, we have begun with clinical experimentation, with clinical protocols, in order to know what are specifically the therapeutical properties of ozone. And we have begun in the field of angiology. Then we have treated patients with diabetic foot with very good results. We increase the healing, and also we avoid or diminish amputations in those patients. And then we continued in the field of ophthalmology, and especially in retinitis pigmentosa, we have treated more than 5,000 patients with good results, increasing visual field in almost 70%.
In Cuba, we have worked and developed therapeutic procedures in angiology, cardiology, gastroenterology, dermatology,
ophthalmology, gynecology, internal medicine, intensive cares, orthopedics, hematology, neurology. You see, we will study every field of medicines, and we have obtained good results. Senile dementia, Alzheimer's disease, stroke. Also, we have treated Parkinson's disease. Always improving quality of life. Of course, I'm not talking about the cure of Parkinson, but that is important. Increase the quality of life is so important that patients, our patients, receive ozone therapy with open heart.
We worked on the AIDS virus to try and see how quickly we could inactivate this and at the same time compare it to what effect that had on a healthy white blood cell. And we found that we could produce an enormous inactivation of the virus, reducing it from 1 million virions down to no viruses at all at, say, 4 micrograms of ozone. And twice that dose had no adverse effect on the healthy white blood cell. During that time from 0 to 8 micrograms, that was double the dose that was adversely affecting the virus, you were actually stimulating the white blood cell to be more effective.
The next step was an animal study. So in 1993, researchers injected plasma contaminated with the simian version of HIV into healthy monkeys. All monkeys injected with contaminated plasma died within 14 days, except those receiving contaminated plasma which had been treated with ozone. They remained 100% uninfected and healthy. Some limited human research followed.
Inadvertently, we discovered that this particular type of therapy has an incredible effect in terms of managing pain. I mean, it has a very potent analgesic effect. And then secondly, we were able to discover that the blood that's ozonized actually triggers off the production of interleukin-2, one of the immune regulators.
I became involved in a car chase where the bad guy tried to avoid police and crashed his vehicle into a body of water. As a result of that, I entered into the body of water to try and extricate the driver from his vehicle, and during the course of that time became exposed to a substance that's believed to be either chemical or viral, bacterial. I became very sick. I was off work for 3 years. One of the doctor's reports that stated that everything that could have been done for me in the hospital system had been done, and that basically it was a case of going home, and if I got better, then that was a plus, and if I didn't get better, then, well, we've tried everything we can for you. Now, I'm just a regular individual. I like to go to ball games, drink a beer. The whole illness process changed my life. And as a result, I had to start looking, researching for myself, ways in which to get back to normal health. So I pursued, among other things, the idea of ozone treatments. And it wasn't something that you could get here in Canada. Within hours of having the first treatment, I started to feel a sense of wellness. And I started to feel my ill health turn around. It was a very long, slow process. But the only intervening factor at the time of the change in my health was the ozone treatment.
And about 6 years ago, I became severely ill. I had fever for a year,